Hello, welcome or welcome back. It is now, as I'm filming this, the 1st of February of 2025. While most folks tend to post videos talking about their New Year's resolutions, reading goals at the beginning of January, as you can see, I'm a little bit behind, I have taken some time to consider and think about some of the resolutions, goals, projects that I want to work on this year. I'm not someone that feels like they have to make themselves anew at the beginning of every year, but I do like to set some things to look forward to, shall we say, some projects in mind that I would like to accomplish, things that I would like to do, more so out of enjoyment and growth, rather than framing it to myself as a needs for improvement or a complete overhaul. So today I thought I would chit chat with you about some of the things that I have been thinking about for the coming year when it comes to my reading, when it comes to this channel, when it comes to writing and making art in general. And if that sounds at all appealing to you, buckle up, we're going to talk about it. I also, before fully jumping into this video, I would like to address the elephant in the room of the past several weeks being a wild ride, a rough ride. As someone living in the United States at the moment, this is a really scary time, and I wanted to acknowledge that and hope that in some way that this video and any of my videos can offer some sense of comfort, of retreat, of a little bit of light escape, if you will. I think it needs to be said that the name of the game for this new administration is fear, chaos, cruelty, having folks feel isolated and not able to trust each other. And so starting this video off with a reminder to myself, but also to you, to take care of yourself in whatever way you can at the moment, so that you're able to show up for the people in your life and the community around you. I think the way that we get through the next 4 years and the many years after is learning how to build lifeboats in whatever way that may be, choosing kindness and care in the face of hatred and cruelty, taking care of one another, looking out for one another, and making sure that we're including everyone and not leaving anyone behind. Now more than ever, I am really feeling the importance and the weight and the need for storytelling and art in a time like this, from the perspective of someone that loves engaging with that, but also someone who loves making that. And something that I've been thinking a lot about personally as far as entering this new year and entering this very uncertain future of how do I, as a writer, a poet, a creative, want to show up and do my work in the world, and what does that look like? I don't necessarily have any clear-cut answers as of yet, but I think that's something that I really want to explore in the coming year and talk about in bits and pieces with you all. And before I actually dive into the meat of this video after rambling here, I'm just gonna ask the question, how are you doing? How are you holding up? If you feel so inclined, let me know something that has happened to you recently that has really brightened up a moment for you, brightened up an outlook, something that has brought you joy. It's really important to note even the very small, potentially passed off as mundane moments in our lives that bring us joy and bring us happiness and allow us to sort of sit in a moment of beauty and admire it. I think purposefully making note of moments like that is really important as a means of keeping the spirit up. So all of that to say, let me know something that has brought you joy down below. How are you doing? What are you reading? Of course, if you want to tell me. But without further ado, let's finally get into the bullet point list that I have in my notebook over here about what I'd like to get up to in 2025. Reading wise, I have set sort of my customary reading goal of reading at least 50 books this year. And in fact, I expect to surpass the 50 books challenge quite a bit, mainly because I'm looking to reread or finally complete some manga series this year, as well as definitely delving into more short poetry collections, literary journals and magazines, shorter reads, sort of expanding the breadth of what I am reading and considering as part of my reading. But I figured I'd start off my yearly reading challenge at where I usually start, which is 50 books. The other reading goal that I currently have is to have the vast majority of the books that I read this year, around 70 to 80%, have those be books that I already own. I have a plethora of unread books on my shelves upstairs, which you probably noticed, but I forgot to mention. I'm filming downstairs at the moment instead of upstairs where my bookshelves are. But upstairs I have probably, I think roughly last time I checked, I have somewhere between 350 and 400 unread books on my shelves, which is kind of ridiculous and something that I would like to make a dent in this year, coming off the heels of my no buy year 2 years ago. I, shall we say, may have gone a little bit off the deep end when it comes to book buying, especially used books. So instead of doing a full-on no buy year this year, my plan is to do a limited buy year. And the parameter that I'm setting for myself is I'm allowed to buy 1 book per month. So that will be a total of 12 books this year. So in that way, I'm still able to pre-order books from some of my favorite authors that have books coming out this year. Something that I'm sort of keen to focus on this year is purposefully and actively making time to read. I have found, I think in the last maybe a couple months, maybe even a year, where I'll have periods where I get sort of busy in other areas of my life or overwhelmed and reading sort of falls by the wayside, and I'll then realize what's happened and then pick up reading in earnest and sort of overload myself with the amount of reading and then sort of fall back into a slump, making sure that I'm carving out moments here and there to read at a more consistent pace. And I think also with my goal of reading more of the books that I already own, which are physical books, the act of reading a physical book and really having to sort of sit in that moment and focus solely on that. I do love audiobooks, and I'm not going to say that I won't listen to audiobooks at all this year, but I think I want to be more cognizant and present when I'm reading. And I think physical books, I'm finding or realizing, sort of allow me to do that much better. There are a couple of audiobooks that I do have plans to hopefully listen to while I'm doing some crafting this year, while I am commuting to and from work. And I think those will likely be more along the lines of rather long books, long fantasy epics that I have really wanted to either reread or read for the first time. One of the things that I love about audiobooks is I can somewhat multitask when I'm listening to an audiobook. I could be cooking dinner, I could be cleaning, and that's all well and good, but like I said, I want to make sure that I am more present and singularly focused on reading when I'm actually reading this year. My hope is that in doing so, I'll be a little bit more engaged with what I'm reading and really be actively absorbed in what I am consuming. And I think this is also a good segue into one of the other points that I have noted in my journal, next to making sure that I'm actively making time to read, but also making sure that I'm carving out the time and the space to just be, to let myself daydream, let my mind wander, sit in solitude, in quiet, not having a screen in front of me, not having a source of stimulation or seeking out a source of dopamine, if you will. Towards the end of last year, I was really starting to confront a little bit more and more how much time I was spending on my phone, on social media, on, sites where I was just scrolling, and in my mind this felt in some way productive, trying to keep up with as many YouTube videos as I could when I got home off of work, listening to as many audiobooks as I could, going about my day to and from work, and starting to realize in the few moments that I really just allowed myself to not be listening to music or an audiobook on my commute to and from work, waking up in the morning and just letting myself look out the window or stare at the ceiling for 15-20 minutes without checking my phone, realizing that those moments of quiet, of solitude, of daydreaming, and sometimes even boredom helped bring about a sense of peace, of mental clarity, got me thinking more and more about how often I was seeking out some sort of stimulation, mental, emotional, what have you. And so part of my, resolution when it comes to making time and space to just be is to seek out boredom, reminding myself to and allowing myself to just exist in the present for a moment, not feel like I have to be running around doing something, accomplishing something, ticking off a box on my to-do list, just letting myself be and seeing what comes of that. And I will likely keep you posted on how that goes. I'd say my big creative goal when it comes to this channel, when it comes to my own writing, my own work, is to practice showing up imperfectly, practice doing things imperfectly, giving myself permission to show up and just make in whatever way I need to, in whatever way I can, and not holding myself back with a sense of I have to wait until it's perfect, or I have to do all of these things in order for it to be good enough to put out into the world. Usually when it's come to making videos for this channel, I in the past have really liked having sort of a heavily scripted video, doing research, really putting a lot of thought and time into the videos that I make, which is all well and good and admirable. On the one hand, I don't necessarily always have time and energy to do that, but also when I found myself out of the rhythm of making videos, it makes it all that much harder to get back on the bandwagon and back into that rhythm schedule of making. And so giving myself the permission to show up imperfectly, to do things off script, to do things less structured, potentially doing some more vlogging where it gives me a little bit more flexibility, being able to sort of pick up the camera and take you along with me and talk to the camera here and there amidst whatever I'm doing that week. I think the biggest creative goal for me this year is to write as much as possible, to actively make time for writing, and so I am at the moment thinking about and working out ways where I can have bits and pieces of my schedule be more flexible, including other creative endeavors that I have, like YouTube. But I would definitely like 2025 to be the year where I practice showing up imperfectly rather than not showing up at all, and being okay with making and putting out things that are less polished within an inch of their life. Sophie from Sophie talked about this in her goals for the new year, and the way she said it just sort of tickled me, but also really resonated. And speaking on her own writing goals, she said that she wanted to write more stupidly for herself this year. It gave me a chuckle, but also resonated in a way where it got me thinking about how in some ways I feel like I have worked through some of my own perfectionism, but I still have a long way to go when it comes to getting out of my own head and just putting stuff down on the page, showing up imperfectly and letting things be messy, letting things be stupid, letting things just be. I'm very prone to get caught up in the details of things before I even put something on the page. I'm a very slow writer, and I think that is in part because I overthink every single sentence that I write. So I would really like to work on getting out of my own head when it comes to writing, and really just write as much as I can, write as many pages, and not care if they're shit, not care if they are not well thought out, of just letting a rough draft be a rough draft. Something doesn't necessarily have to come of that rough draft, but either way, it doesn't matter that it's not hyper polished, that it is not perfect. I would really like to work on falling in love again, and more so with the process and the journey and the art of writing in general, rather than the final destination. Along these lines, I have been rethinking how I would like to approach putting things out on my Substack, where I have previously published a few pieces, but the pieces that I have put out have been very polished and sort of to that very rigid personal standard that I currently have. And I would like to sort of break the mold a little bit for myself this year, put out things that are less structured, less polished, and potentially more so along the lines of musings, of personal snapshots and casual personal essays. I definitely have in mind to work on some more research-heavy, structured essays that I would like to potentially put out 1 or 2 on my Substack this year, but more so I would really like this year to be the year where I start submitting to literary magazines and journals. That has been a long-time goal of mine, and I feel like I'm starting to be ready to venture into that world, she says tentatively, letting my creative hair down, if you will. Jumping back quickly to some reading goals that I failed to mention because they were on the final page of my list, but I have a small list of authors that I would really like to read for the first time or to continue reading more of their work in the coming year. And those 5 authors are James Baldwin, Elena Ferrante, Albert Camus, Anais Nin, and Marcel Proust. Those were the authors that immediately jumped to mind when I was looking at my own collection and wanting to hone in a little bit more on some of the things that I would really like to read this year. So those are some authors that it came to mind. I also made a note at the end of this list that I really want to read more poetry this year. I have a handful of poetry collections on my shelf that are unread, but also last week when I was at the library picking up some movies, I perused their poetry section and came home with a stack of poetry collections. So poetry has definitely been something that has been holding me together in the last couple of weeks. It has really been a balm and a beacon, and I'm excited to talk about some of the poetry that I've been reading recently here on the channel. I will say that one of the poetry collections that I've been continuing to dip in and out of is the Allen Ginsberg poetry collection that I read and raved about in a previous reading vlog. I will link it wherever the cards are. But yeah, that continues to blow me away and feel like a cathartic hug. I'd really like to make a point this year of doing some sort of literary pilgrimage, visiting a location or an item that is being displayed in a museum that is tied to an author. I don't necessarily have anything specific in mind, but that is something that I'm thinking about, potentially visiting an author's house, visiting an archive where some of their papers are kept. We shall see. Along with that, I would like to make the time to take a writing trip again this year, potentially more than one. I, for the past couple of years, have taken a solo writing trip abroad. I did Venice and then Paris, which were both incredible and deeply meaningful and formative for me as a person and as a writer. But this year I'm going back and forth as to whether I would like to do an international trip or keep it within the country. We'll see. But a solo writing trip I can definitely plan for in this year, along with some other writing trips in general with my partner, with friends who are also writers, which falls into one of my larger goals of just making more time to write. I'm definitely trying to make an effort this year to get back into a good journaling routine as well, and I've been decently successful with that so far. Journaling is something that I have been doing since I was about 16, has been a wonderful and formative practice for myself over the many years that I've been doing it. But I definitely go through phases where I will journal a ton, and sometimes where there will be several months in between entries. And in the times where I have been journaling more frequently, I have definitely noticed a positive change in myself as far as my own mindset, my own mentality, but also I find that creativity flows a lot easier for me. So getting back to a more regular journaling routine. Jumping back briefly again to talk about some of the things that I would like to read this year. Apologies, I'm a little bit all over the place. The bullet points that I wrote down were not super organized, but we are showing up imperfectly for this video. I have a list of some manga series that I would really like to finish reading or reread this year, and the first being the Yona of the Dawn manga series that I have been following for the past several years. That is likely coming to an end soonish. I don't know if it'll be this year or next, but we are definitely in the final arc for that. So I would really like to go back and reread the series from the start. I haven't been following for the last maybe 50 or so chapters, and so I have the urge to just go back and read everything from the beginning and sort of see it through as it comes. Likewise, I would also like to continue reading the Noragami series. I have read the first 2 omnibuses of that, so up to volume 6, I believe. I'd really love to read through the Doro Hidoro manga series. This is the manga that one of my favorite animes is based off of, and I would really like to go and actually read the source material for it. This is one of my partner's favorite mangas and animes as well, and he actually owns the vast majority of the volumes, so I will have to borrow them off of him. And I would also really like to finish reading the Jellyfish Princess manga series. I feel like I only have a couple volumes left, but I started reading that last summer, I believe. Really enjoyed it. It's quite fun, but I would like to finish out the series this year. I also have a note here that I would really like to actively read more writing and arts journals and really expand sort of what I pull into my orbit when it comes to what I consider to be reading materials. Looking outside of the usual fiction or nonfiction books, sort of going in tandem with my goal of writing for and submitting pieces to be potentially published in a journal. Just getting a better feel for what journals are out there, what is being published, where my work might fit. And then something I also wanted to touch on that isn't quite book or writing related, but is sort of an overall lifestyle and outlook that I am approaching 2025 with, and that is making this year a year of low consumption. I know the term underconsumption is something that has been sort of a, I don't want to say a hot button word, but it's a term that I've definitely heard floating around more and more, and I think it definitely makes sense for the current zeitgeist and the current atmosphere that we are in at the moment, headed into, as part of my desire and practice to remain as present as I can in the current moment. I know that some of my own escapist tendencies can be browsing for things online, browsing for new clothes, new makeup, new books, looking for a little sense of escape and getting myself a little treat, if you will, and using that as a way to seek out some dopamine, to escape, to disassociate a little bit. And I'm not saying that that coping mechanism is inherently bad or unhealthy, but I think it's something that I definitely want to rein in more. And so hence why I'd like to have this coming year be one where it is a low consumption year for me when it comes to those things. I'm definitely going to take a feather out of Leena Norm's cap and sort of tag along for her. I think it's called her Year of Make Do, where she has challenged herself to not buy any new clothes for the coming year, and if she really wants something, that she will have to make it herself. And so going off of that, my goal is to not buy any new from the store clothes. If there's something that I really, really need and don't think that I have the skill level to make, I would like to thrift it. The exception being for things like underwear, but I don't see myself needing new underwear in the next year. Fingers crossed. I'm definitely at a place with my wardrobe where I feel like I have the majority of my bases covered when it comes to my needs, but when it comes to adding a new piece here and there, that is something that I definitely think that I can manage when it comes to making my own clothes. Sewing is something that I've really gotten into in the last year or so. And for me personally, when it comes to clothes going forward, I think for hopefully the rest of my life, I would like to learn how to make the vast majority of the clothes that I need or want out of a sense of sustainability and being cognizant of the impact that the fast fashion industry has on our planet, which is devastating, but also as someone who lives in a plus size body and often struggling to find clothes that fit me in the way that I would like them to. So learning how to make clothes for myself, getting to custom fit them, if you will, and pick out the fabrics and the designs myself, that is definitely appealing to me. Briefly show you a project that I am just about finished. Well, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it this zoomed in, but this is a shirt that I made off of a pattern from Folkwear Patterns. This is their Riverboat Man's shirt. It is a historically inspired shirt, sort of slightly poofy sleeved, but yeah, this came out really well, and this, would you believe, was made from a bedsheet from the thrift store. And it is very, very comfortable. I'm very excited to wear this. Continue to make more things out of thrifted bed sheets this summer. So that is definitely a larger project and a larger goal of mine. I'm also setting the parameter for myself that aside from, say, essential things that I would need to replace, like mascara or concealer that I run through pretty quickly, I am putting myself on a makeup no-buy for the next 6 months, and in 6 months I will reevaluate and see if there's anything that I would really, really like to pick up. When it comes to clothes, when it comes to makeup, I really want to focus on what I have and really get to more so appreciate what I already have and play with what I have. Rather than chasing down the new shiny thing. And that also includes things like crafting supplies, sewing supplies. I have definitely bought my fair share of bed sheets from the thrift store as well as new fabric. So I am sort of not necessarily putting myself on a full out no buy for those things, because I think there are probably a few things that I will need to pick up for some of the projects that I have in mind for the next couple of months. Things like zippers and buttons, but when it comes to fabric, I think I'm pretty good for likely at least this year. I actually, earlier today, I laid out all of the fabric that I have and paired it up with the sewing patterns that I currently have and counted how many future projects that would entail, and I think it was somewhere around 25 different projects. So I think I'm well sorted for this year when it comes to fabric and sewing patterns. So reining myself in a little bit when it comes to browsing and shopping for those things. I'd say the desire for me to consume less, to really focus on what I have, comes from a place of wanting to examine some of the coping mechanisms that I currently have, practice finding new and likely healthier coping mechanisms, doing my best to stay present emotionally, physically, spiritually in the current moment, despite it being very uncomfortable in many ways. Also wanting to garner a greater sense of appreciation and recognition for the things that I already currently have in my life, and not feeling like I'm missing out on something or looking at my life with a sense of lack when there is clearly so much good and so many good things in it. Also financially, I would definitely like to make sure that I am saving up as much money as I can. My partner and I, for the last couple months, have been on the house hunting journey, and believe you me, it is expensive in general, but it is also incredibly expensive where we live. And as first-time homebuyers, it is a little daunting. So we are trying to save up as much money as we can for that. I guess all of that falling into the category of wanting to stay focused and present and an active participant in this life that I have. So with that, I think I'm going to start to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you feel so inclined, let me know what are some of your goals for this year. If you've made them for yourself, what do you think of New Year's resolutions or goals? I hope that you're managing to take care of yourself in whatever way you can. Find ways to metaphorically, spiritually build lifeboats for yourself and the people around you, the world around you if you can, and hold tight to each other. It's going to be rough, but it's going to be rough, and I don't want to sugarcoat things. I don't want to downplay what is happening in the world around us, but one of my hopes for the coming year for this channel is to help inspire a sort of spiteful hope, shall we say, a la Allen Ginsberg, seeing hope as a weapon that we learn how to wield in order to get ourselves and the rest of us free, and to help build a world that is kind and caring and equitable for everyone. And with that, I think I need to get off my soapbox and close out this video. But I see you, I love you, hang in there. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.